Good morning, all. Welcome. Welcome to this Regional Council meeting of Thursday, July 11, 2019. Roll call. Madam Clerk, all members are present except Councillor McFadden. And I understand she is away on a personal matter. And I understand Mayor Thompson is away on a personal matter, but we have Councillor Early here on his behalf. Welcome and good to have you here. Thank you very much. With that, are there any declarations of conflict of interest? Seeing none. Approval of the minutes from the June 27th Regional Council meeting. They've been moved by Councillor Starr, seconded by Councillor Sinclair. All those in favour? That is carried. Approval of the agenda, and I believe I have an addition. It would read as follows, that the agenda for July 11 Regional Council meeting include a delegation from Jasbir Singh and Jajit J. Singh, residents of City of Brampton, to be dealt with under delegations item 7.3, and further that the agenda for the July 11, 2019 Regional Council meeting include a motion regarding the creation of decals for the Pride and Trans flag to be dealt with under other business items 19.1, and further that a communication item from the Office of the Fire Marshal and Chief of Emergency Management regarding the northern evacuees also be added as item 10.2, and further that the agenda for the July 11, 2019 council meeting be approved as amended. It's been moved by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Councillor Demerla. All those in favour? That is carried. Thank you. Are there any public announcements sponsored by a member at this time? Maybe I will, on behalf of the region, say I acknowledge that last month and this month was Pride Month. They tend to celebrate it in June and other parts, us in July. So I want to acknowledge all our communities, and I love a phrase that I've come to lately in life, is that you should love whoever you like, you should worship whoever you like, and you should wear whatever you like. And maybe those are words to live by. So shout out to all our groups that are all part of the people that belong under our tent. Thank you very much. Okay, with that, I am on to the consent agenda. So we have the 3 delegations, staff presentations. I'm going to 9 items related to enterprise programs. Item 9.1. Do I have consent? Councillor Parrish, you want that held? Thank you. 9.2 has consent. 9.3. Items 10.1 to be held as well. Item 11.1. Oh, sorry, and we just added 10.2 on the agenda itself. And Madam Clerk, was that something that could be done under consent? Or?
Yep, just to receive.
And remind us all, including the chair,
what letter from the Ontario Fire Marshal about the northern evacuees.
Oh, can I, you know what, and I may have to make a comment to my council colleagues about the situation with evacuees and the Syrian refugees as well, that I think are later in our agenda, that I think I should bring some information to council's attention, if I could suggest both of those be held as well. Okay, thank you, Madam Clerk. Item 11.2. Sorry, so 11.1 is on consent. 11.2, consent. 11.3, 11.4, 11.5, to be held, thank you. 11.6, consent. 11.7, consent. Item 12.1. On consent, item 12.2. Councillor Sinclair, to be held? Is that correct, Councillor Sinclair? We're holding 12.2. Thank you. Items under 13 related to health. 13.1. To be held. Thank you. Items 14 for communication are none. Items 15. Items 15.1. Item 15.2. And Madam Mayor Crombie, you're correct. What I was referring to was items 15.3 and 15.5 that I think we need a little discussion around. Thank you. Hold both. Thank you very much, Mayor Crombie. Item 15.4 on consent. Item 16.1 consent. Items related to planning and growth. 17.1 on consent. 18.1 consent. And other. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. 16.1 and to be referred. Yep. Okay, so we're good. Thank you. Brings me to other business under 19. There is the 19.1 that we've dealt with regards to the banners or the decals that relate to the Pride and the Crosswalk.
That's Mayor Brown's motion.
Mayor Brown's motion.
He wants that held.
So I'm assuming that is, Councillor Santos asked us to have it on the agenda. I'm assuming we want that held for discussion. Very good. Notices of motion, 20.1, 2, and 3, that all relate to the good work that Councillor Fonseca does at FCM. Do we need those held?
And Councillor Santo.
And Councillor Santo, of course. Do we wish those on consent or held? Councillor Fonseca to be held?
Consent it is.
Consent? Okay, very good. Then I'm under the bylaws in the in-camera, and I'm sure we'll be going in-camera.
In-camera 22.
Oh, yes, there is one sort of administrative matter. I believe certainly one of the items, we have a personnel matter that I'm sure we'll be holding in camera, but 22.2 is it,
22.1.
sorry, 22.1
The one that's related to,
with regards to housing.
does it go on consent?
Does it go on consent? It has a related outside report. Do we want it on consent as well? We said consent on the outside. This is just a formality that related to it, so that is on consent.
And then we're good.
On 22.2, Madam Clerk?
We're going to hold all, the rest of it in camera.
Very good. Okay, thank you all for your patience. I now need a vote with regards to the consent agenda. An electronic vote, please. Very good, Mayor Crombie. As moved by Mayor Crombie, as seconded by Councillor Dasco. And that carries. Thank you. Okay, we're on to delegation 7.1. Ann and Don Bell, Mississauga homeowners regarding wastewater charges. Mr. and Mrs. Bell, welcome.
Is this mic okay? Does that work? Okay. Mrs. Bell's not here, so I'm on my own, but she handled most of this issue. I'm here to ask council to authorize the correction of our water bill. In early May, she discovered a prepayment in our bank account from Peel Water for $4,600, which is a little higher than what it normally would be. Normally, it would be about $300. You have a copy of that bill, I believe, right? Okay. And so we thought it was an error, and after speaking with Peel, she told me that Peel had told her that it was not an error and that they had actually come to the house a couple of times to contact us, but we weren't home, and apparently they said they left something in the mailbox, but we never got any kind of notice that there was a problem with our water bill. So in the end, what had actually happened that was apparently we had a burst pipe, an outside pipe running between our house and our garage, and it had been burst and gushing water probably sometime at the end of January all the way through till May the 4th when we had a plumber shut off that line. So there's actually two bills. The first bill that she saw go through the prepayment was $46.75, and then there was a second bill that covered part of that period between up until May the 4th when the water was shut off. That one's for $1,800. So it's about $6,500 in total for the two bills. And we don't have an issue with paying for the use of the water, but clearly the water did not go down the sewers because it was 30 feet from our house. It went into the ground. So it didn't go through a drain or anything. So there's about $2,500 worth of wastewater that we were charged, and we don't think that's really a valid charge because it never went into the sewers. So we're just asking council to authorize Peel to correct our bill so that we'll pay the $4,000, I guess, for the water usage, but there's $2,500 which was sewage charges. So it's kind of as simple as that.
Thank you. Perhaps I can turn first to staff to give, I understand you're aware of the file. Perhaps staff would like to give a brief explanation.
Through the chair, yes, we're aware of the specific case raised by Mr. and Mrs. Bell. One of the guiding principles that we try to follow is to ensure that we treat our customers consistently. With respect to how wastewater volumes are billed to customers, the region follows industry norms, which is to charge wastewater volumes using water volumes as a proxy. In the region's case, that happens to be 85%. So for every dollar of water that's charged, there's an extra surcharge of 85 cents to capture the wastewater that returns to the system. And this allows the region to recover all costs for collecting and treating wastewater in our system. Some residents may use more wastewater, some of them may use less. As a simple example, someone that has a swimming pool that fills up their swimming pool, they're not only paying for the water that goes into the pool, but they're also paying the 85 cents for the water that doesn't necessarily go down to the sewage system, but as a matter of process, they get charged that 85 cents as well. Some residents will always be higher, some will always be lower. The reason why this methodology is actually being used is that there's no proven technology that we're aware of at this point in water, at this point in time, that would allow you to meter wastewater at that level. That's why using water volume as a proxy is most commonly used in the industry. Everyone pays the average, and that's just how the industry generally works. There always has and there are always going to be anomalies in terms of people using water where the wastewater doesn't get back to the system. And my personal concern is that if we want to be consistent with all residents, then exception on one creates an exception for others. And what that does, it pushes us to process a bill, to accurately bill for wastewater, but there's no proven technology that allows you to do that reliably and consistently. Hence, using water as a proxy, while recognizing it isn't perfect, is one that we use, that the industry uses consistently across the GTHA at least.
Thank you. I have further speakers. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you for coming today, Mr. Bell. My questions are more to staff to start, which is the attempt to notify the homeowner. Couple knocks on the door, or two visits to the house, but they can't find anything that was left behind. What other things are we doing to try to alert some of these spikes in the system for the individual homeowner? And I think further, we have condo owners coming up next, probably with the same issue, to flag these as early as possible and connect with the homeowner.
Well, through the chair, right now, our process is right now is as we do the reads for the water for the bill, we notice something that's high, we'll knock on the door, is what we normally do. In this case here, a slip was left in the door.
No, there was nothing left on our door. There was nothing left on our door. I know that for a fact, otherwise we would have seen it.
Yeah.
And that, some staff person at Peel had said, she went into her file and she said, oh, we left something in the door. Oh, no, we didn't. Sorry, my notes say we left something in the mailbox. We never got anything, there was nothing in the mailbox.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So back to staff, I'm just wondering, I think we need to do greater due diligence in trying to connect with those homeowners rather than leaving something in the mailbox or on the door. I don't know if there's a better way to connect with them via email or phone. I'm sure we have that.
We can take that back.
Okay.
Absolutely.
I guess the question is for this one, Mr. Bell is completely willing to pay the water use because I think you probably have the greenest lawn in the neighborhood after all that water being put into it. But knowing that wastewater did not enter the wastewater system, and this is one of those, I would say, exceptions where perhaps there's an opportunity to work out a more reasonable water bill in this case. I think the region could have done a little bit more with connecting with the homeowner. I would move, Mr. Chair, that we staff go back to Mr. Bell to work out a reasonable deal on the wastewater.
Very good. So referral back to staff.
Yes, please.
Very good. That's been moved by Councillor Raz. Are there a seconder to that? Councillor Parrish. Do I have any other speakers to the motion? So there you have it. The resolution is that it go back to staff for further consultation with the homeowner. All those in favor of that direction, show of hands. That is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation today, Mr. Bell.
Thank you for a very rational solution. Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, item 7.2, board members and unit owners appeal Condominium Corp. 621 regarding high water charges for the last quarter of 2017. And I understand on behalf of the organization, Mose Moladina is here. Mr. Moladina, if you would like to come forward. Please, yes. Welcome, sir. Please proceed.
Good morning, everyone. I'm representing Peel Condo Corp. number 621. The unit owners in that building are mostly living in Brampton and have made their home in Brampton. Since inception of this building, I think it was 1991, the water bills every quarter have not been more than $2,000 to $3,000. Maximum bill in the last probably 10 years, if you see the records, they were about $2,500. The maximum was about $3,500. And all of a sudden, the last quarter of 2017, we got a bill of $25,000 and change. Now, nothing has changed in that building. No construction, no extra piping, nothing has been done in that building since inception. And we were wondering why the bill was so high. So we had our plumber, upon instruction from Region of Peel, we had our plumber check the system out, all the units during the daytime as well as at night after the businesses are closed. And he couldn't, except for the minor issues, he couldn't find anything major. And he was also wondering that a $25,000 bill all of a sudden is not correct. Something must have been wrong somewhere. So we had everything checked from our end. Now there's no restaurants, no high volume water usage. It's only a retail plaza. So there's no way we could have used. And for using $25,000 of water, somebody would have noticed if there would have been a ground leak or somewhere something else, somebody would have noticed the water and complained. I'm the property manager for that building. So I would request the council to consider our case. These people are all small business people, and they're trying to survive in this economy and make Brampton their home and life with.
Thank you for your presentation. I have a list of questioners. Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, through the chair. Just a couple of questions and one for the Dogish. Do you have a fire hydrant on that property?
Sorry?
Fire hydrant. Fire hydrant.
Fire alarm?
Yeah.
No, there is fire alarm.
Hydrant. The fire
Hydrant?
Yeah.
Yeah, there is fire hydrants.
Okay, so did you got cameras there and see? Because that goes through
our
your
plumber
meter?
checked everything and nothing, there was no leaks anywhere.
No, people take the water at night. That's what I'm trying to say. They could come there. Am I correct? With the staff?
You're correct. That does happen from time to time. Ours as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So a lot of the times the properties have the fire hydrant in case there's a fire. That's connected to your meter. And I know a couple of other properties in my area, and they go there at night and take water. So I don't know what staff could do to help them in that way, but
I think if anything is activated, I think it should be visible. Somebody would notice that kind of water coming out of the pipes.
Perhaps, Councillor Fort, you still have the floor, but why don't we get a comment from staff on the point you've just made and anything else they wish to add? The issue of water theft, which you're right is becoming a little more common lately, and anything else you can speak to on the file through to staff before I go back to Councillor Fortini.
Thanks, Chair. So through the Chair. So after we did get this notification of the bill, one common thing that we do is we will go out and we will calibrate the meter. We will make sure that it's reading accurately, and we did. And it showed that it was reading, I think, within 99%, and they tend to read a little bit low. So we have a report on that. We also, when they tend to fail and stop. They don't tend to fail and read high. Because it's a it's something turning inside that reads when there's water flow, when there's flow, it runs, and when there's no flow, it stops. So they tend to seize, which means we would find a low bill, we would go replace the meter. So we're at a loss, outside of the suggestion of Councilor Fortini, to explain from our end what would drive the bill. The meter is accurate, and we stand behind the reading. As for water theft through hydrants, we do catch people, I wouldn't say regularly, but from time to time, and do pursue them. It's usually notified through private residents or businesses, and we pursue it, put a camera on it, we find them, and we charge them.
Thank you. Councillor Fortini, you still have the floor. Pat, anything further? Councillor Fortini, you're good. Thank you very much. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. $25,000 is a little bit excessive, especially considering the bills are about $1,500 to $2,000 a month. So I'm reading the summary that staff had sent, and staff had advised the property owners to get a plumber to investigate. The plumber found some leaks in the unit, but said that the leaks wouldn't cause a bill that high. And the staff went on to say they tested the meter and the results came back 99% accurate. So is there a 1% chance that there could be some other issue? It's been confirmed by the plumber that the type of leaks that they found wouldn't cause a $25,000 water bill. Sorry, this is to staff.
So the only evidence we have to go on is what our responsibility ends at the meter, and that the evidence we have is what was read in the meter. It's through the rest of the complex, all the plumbing to the units, whether there's an irrigation system or not, we have no way of knowing what goes on past our delineation.
So is there some type of appeals process we do have in place? Because it's essentially, it's the plumbers and the condos word against the Peel Regions, and essentially it's almost as if it's you're guilty until proven innocent, you have to pay the water bill.
Well, actually, what we normally do is do what we do. We go out, we check the meter, we check our line, and sometimes we do find that there has been an error, something in the calculation, and we do, as staff, work with property owners and make it right. In the case where we go out and find that all of the pieces line up, that the evidence is something we can believe in, we stand behind it.
No, but would there not be a, for example, a second opinion maybe at the cost of the condo owner where the Peel Region sends somebody out to investigate, and so they can, cross-examine some of the findings of their plumber?
No, we don't have any process for doing that.
So it seems like a pretty unfair process to me, to essentially say, listen, it's up to, the water meter and that's it. We've had not only this case, but there's dozens of cases where some of the residents just in my wards alone are saying we get this water bill this high, that the Peel Region comes and says, you guys do great work, obviously, but Peel Region will come in and say, listen, this is it, you got to pay the water bill. And they're left hung to dry. Some people, obviously $4,600, I guess, the previous resident. And so maybe I'd look to see what the experience of other councillors is before I go on. I'm sure that they've also had some similar incidences, but there has to be some type of process in place where we can either assist these people with these excessive water bills, or some type of process in place to really prove and to find what the actual root cause of it is.
Thank you. Councillor Demerla.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to staff. I'm sure this is not the first time an issue like this has cropped up, and I'm just curious, in the past, have there been any ways in which to reduce the burden somewhat, if there was theft or unknown causes?
Oh, sorry, through the chair. So our usual approach is to work with the customer to, like I said, do our best due diligence to make sure the data is accurate. Our responsibility ends at the meter. We are not able to go into private properties and do all the troubleshooting. But we will work with them on a plan to push those payments out over a longer period of time to ease the burden as best as possible. It doesn't reduce the total, but it's meant to reduce the burden over time.
Thank you. Councillor Parrish.
Well, could you, to the delegate, could you remind me again, how much did the bill change?
Sorry?
How much was it originally, and now how much is it?
Normally, the bills never ran more than $3,000
A year? Or a
every
month?
quarter.
Every quarter. So it's 3,000 every quarter, so that's 12,000 a year, and now it's 25,000 a year?
Sorry?
How much has it gone up to
Highest was $3,500.
after the incident?
After that, it corrected itself. The next bill after the 25,000 was $1,300.
It was 25,000.
And we didn't do anything. The plumber suggested, as I told you, there was minor issues, which I told him to repair, but he suggested, don't do anything, let's wait till the next bill. The next bill came to $1,300.
And Councillor Fortini's talking about water theft. Do we, to the staff, are our hydrants set up that they're impossible to break into?
Through the chair, it's difficult, but it does happen. We don't meter them, though.
We don't meter
We
the
don't meter at
hydrants?
hydrants, no. We do have hydrant permits where we allow construction firms or people doing construction, but we will put a meter on it before they use it legitimately, come to the end, issue them a bill, close it off again afterwards.
Okay, thank you. I feel very badly for you. That sounds bizarre. I'll wait and see what your local councillor has to say.
Thank you, Councillor Parrish, as do I. Do I have a recommendation, a referral to staff? Is there any recommendation from the floor? Councillor Fortini.
Thank you, through the chair. Just to stop, to Andrew, you said it doesn't go through the meter? It's still calculated through the meter.
Correct. Through the
It
chair. If
doesn't
there
go
was
through-
if there's a private hydrant.
Right.
Correct. That would be on the private side of the meter. I was meaning more public hydrants on the street are not metered in any way. But if it's a private side meter, correct.
Yeah, it goes through the meter. That's what I was trying to clarify. So on a regular condominium where you have houses, and you got showers and toilets and stuff like that, these are condominiums, they're just commercial. So the worst they have is a sink. To get $25,000 bill, if there's a pipe leak, you're going to see it through the ground. That's a lot of water. It's like 3 times the size of a pool coming out, and it's going to be damp somewhere sooner or later. So I don't see there's a leak or anything. I just don't know what to say. Maybe work it out with staff and see what we can do, send it out and see what you can do to help them out.
So, Councillor Fortini, I think that I'm going to, Councillor Dillon is still on my list. Councillor Dillon, please.
Oh, can we move today to city appeal? No. Can we move today to, or do I need to write it out, to anybody who has an issue with their water, to put it on hold right now until we come up with a process to really investigate what's going on? $25,000 is a lot. Some people who are barely getting by they don't know the process. They don't even come in to delegate. They might send me an email and they'll say, listen, I got this bill for like $3,000-4,000, and that's like a couple months of their budget for the year. If we put a freeze, come up with a system, an appeals process or investigation process, because it's too much for us to just say, too bad. We just go up to the meter. There has to be some other way, whether we find we work with a partner to maybe at the residents or the business owner's expense to go and investigate. I don't know how much that'll cost, but it's an investment for them. They'll be saving money. But I've seen it too many times, and it's just too much for businesses and residents. And so I don't know if I need to write that up, or can we just move that?
I will come right back to you. Councillor Peleshi's on my list, and then maybe we'll frame something around your direction. Councillor Peleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I understand Councillor Dillon's wanting to put a freeze on this, but I'm not 100% sure on what that means. Typically, when we have residents come to us, the issue is on their side of the meter, and staff, we send it back to staff. Staff have a discussion with the residents and see if we can come up with some kind of payment plan. I think this is a little bit different where, you know, if it didn't leak on our side and it didn't leak on their side, maybe it is the theft. And so maybe there's an opportunity then to attach this, as the other was referred back to staff, to refer this back to staff and have staff with the possibility of Peel Regional Police do some sort of investigation. If you have cameras, like it's obviously a water truck that would come and pull up and steal the water, so there wouldn't be any evidence, but maybe there's cameras in the area, but maybe this is, you know, we're talking about a lot of money, so maybe it does warrant an investigation by Peel Regional Police, and maybe staff can assist in that. So I would be happy to support a referral back to staff to have this investigated. As for what you're talking about, just to help this going further, maybe we don't pause anything. Maybe we just request staff to give some sort of presentation to council and with options on what we can do going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you to staff, council has approved fees for staff to go out and do this type of investigation. So it's in our fees and charges bylaw that you have to charge if, you know, if a resident has a leak, and if the region goes in to investigate on the resident's side, then there are fees. Now, I know checking meters and things is not included in that. Is that correct?
Correct, that's part of what we do. Because
Okay,
we want to make
so
sure,
is-
we want to make sure as much as the resident or customer that the bill's
Yeah.
accurate.
Okay. One of the things that I found this year, and I probably have had more, you know, I get off and on, I'll get complaints like this, and staff go out and investigate, and it's dealt with, and it's usually found that there's some form of a leak on the resident's side. That's, I would say, the majority. But it's interesting that this spring I had several different, and it was on a couple of different streets, where and it wasn't to this extent, but where the bill came in, you know, a couple living in the home on their own, senior couple, not using a lot of water, and all of a sudden they had this huge spike in their water bill. And it happened right after the meters were exchanged, so after the new meters came in. And I know staff went out and I want to say you did an amazing job investigating. And I asked them to check what everybody else on the street, what their water bills looked like, and, you know, was this an isolated incident? And there were a couple on the street that had gone up, but most of them were pretty much the same. But it was, and I know you checked the water meters, but, you know, it just seemed, I think the comment was, well, it's probably your underground sprinkler system that's leaking. And it's just seemed to be an excessive amount of water if it was a slow leak. And if it was, you know, excessive leaking, you would notice it on the grass, because my next door neighbor had a leak in his system, and it was basically flooding the side of my house. Every time it turned on, the water flowed down. So it was very obvious, you know, that the water was coming through. So I guess as you're looking into the request that has just been made of how we do these investigations, I really would like you to again take a closer look at the meters that we're putting in. And, you know, I know you check them and they seem to be okay, but, you know, when you still get situations that you just cannot figure out what the cause is, and if we were to go in and investigate the residents' pipes, there would be a fee. And I think that's fair. I mean, we discussed that there should be a fee. It's on private property. It's not the region responsibility what happens on that property. But maybe we could take a look at that fee again, because I think we increased it to be fairly significant. So, you know, I don't know what it costs to have somebody do that, but maybe before we deal with the fees and charges again for 2020, we could take a look at that and just see if it's reasonable.
Thank you. Councillor Dillon, before I go to you, the clerk's put through some words that perhaps might be, I know you're the next speaker on my list, but the way the clerk has encapsulated it for everyone's consideration is to refer back to staff for a report on the process to investigate and manage abnormally significantly higher water bills, including tactics for investigation. And in the meantime, staff continue to work with the homeowners with abnormally significant higher water bills for payment. Staff report back can contain information about the number of such bills, best practices, possibility of thefts, causes of such high bills, and potential types of investigations. The only question that I would have, Councillor Dillon, before I put it back to you, nobody's asked it. If I may, if your bill's normally $3,000 and suddenly it's 26 over a quarter, what does $23,000 of water look like? Is there a truck I can rent and go to a meter and take 23? Or yes, you can, but you'd bring the truck back 70 times? Or does anybody have an idea of what does that look like? Nobody's asked it, and I was curious. And maybe not for now, but I'm just trying. Yeah, but like if someone did, let's assume if that's the only, I'm just out of curious, like is there a vehicle that can say you could load it up and it has 23,000? Or is it, no, Nando, you'd have to do 100 trips? Anybody have a quick rough-hewn answer for that?
I'm trying to picture the size of a water truck. It's 23 cubic meters, so it's a dump truck. full of
Oh, okay. So it's
Two, yeah.
wow. Okay, so one.
Yeah, 2 tankers, yeah.
2 tankers, very good, sir. Thank you that helps immensely. So it would be 2 tankers full, which is considerably less than I thought it would have been, but thank you very much. Councillor Dillon, back to you.
I think Councillor Downey wants to explain a little bit more.
Somewhat anecdotal, but it took 3 trucks to fill my swimming pool at a cost of $1,000.
So 3 times 25.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, that's helpful. Councillor Dillon, you still have the floor.
Yeah, so are we able to get the motion on the screen?
I think it's direction
written?
to staff. Do you want
So it's a staff report back. And so I heard investigations in there, but can we look at options for some type of process for a resident or a business owner to appeal? Would that be included in the language?
I think what you're working through is the appeal process,
Right.
but maybe the CAO can speak to that.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We do meet, as staff said, with homeowners when we get these unusual bills. And we do, as Councilor Sato has pointed out, sometimes go in and do investigations with them. I think at this point, what we should do is we should work with the current situations, both of them as described, as recommended by Council, and bring back in September a report that shows what we do. If we want to expand what we do, say, for example, in situations where the volume is over a certain size increase, have an investigation process in place as a charge to that. Bring that back to Council. Also look at the correlation. We can look back over the last couple of years with the correlation of these spikes, something that Councilor Sato said, with the installation of new meters to see if there's any correlation there. And I'm not sure what else was written on that page, but I think the key is to work with the 2 currently and bring back in the first meeting in September an overview of what's happening, correlation of spikes to new meter installs, and also go through how we can work with homeowners in these difficult situations to verify the findings.
Can we, for these 2 situations today, put a pause on the payment? Yeah, until September, because the gentleman here indicated that they didn't touch anything, they didn't do anything. They left the leaks as is, and it was automatically back to $3,000. And as Councilor Downey stated, that 3 trucks to fill 1 pool at about $1,000. And so for $25,000, I'm guessing that's 75 trucks, if my math is correct. And so
the short answer, Councillor, to your question is, with Council's support, we can put a hold on collecting from this. I think Council's already given us direction to work with the first delegate. With this delegate, put a hold on collecting the bill, and we'll send staff in if the condo owners agree, to take a look on the private side to see if we can identify any issues. Because where we've been invited into private homes before, we have found things like leaking toilets, backup valves that aren't working properly, and other things. So we will certainly do that on this particular case because it is a large. And we can include the report on our findings back in September with that report back.
Okay, so just the last question, though. The options that we're going to bring back in September, would it include, if you can just summarize,
Madam Clerk.
what are we looking at?
Madam Clerk, why don't you read, as you understand what the direction would be, in addition to what's just been added by the city, the CAO?
Refer to staff to report back on the process to investigate and manage abnormally significantly higher water bills, including tactics for investigating. In the meantime, staff continued to work with the homeowners with abnormally significantly higher water bills for payment, and in particular, put Peel Condominium Corporation 621 on hold until the report returns. The staff report can contain information about the number of such bills, best practices, possibility of thefts, possible causes of high water bills, including correlation of spikes to new water meters installed, and potential types and costs of investigations.
Councillor Dillon, does that have it?
I'm just trying to see if there's options for, it seems okay, but I'm just wondering, at the end, when that does come back, what will their options be? Will they have an option to, after the investigation, for example, can we form a committee to look at these things?
Yes, sure.
So all those are.
Yeah, I would answer this way. I think all that information will be a great starting point to see what the next steps would be, recognizing that the bill's being held in abeyance until such time. Does that have it?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Councillor Paleshi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just really quickly, and I think this is a good direction to staff. I think I request that when this does come back, maybe by way of the audit committee or internal audit, that we have some kind of audit of our metering systems. And really, I don't know how many meters we actually have out there, how many fail, what are the percentages, and I hear what some of those percentages are, but maybe an audit needs to be had of this. So I think I would support and hopefully have that included in that report that comes back. I may be pushing this report a little bit further away now that I'm requesting this. And then additionally, what Councillor Dillon was referring to is options, having some of those options come back by way of this report as well.
City CAO?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we can do the two in tandem simultaneously. We can start on the report to come back in September. I don't want to push that report out. And also ask the audit group to audit the metering system to report back when their audit's complete. I don't think we need to hold up the first one to do the second.
Perfect.
Okay, thank you. The only other thing that I would add is, and Councillor Sader will tell you, Councillor Carlson will tell you, this is not uncommon. We get about 2 a year over all of my year, and the same sorts of questions come up. I think it is time for another review as outlined. I think that would be helpful. I've got one other speaker, Councillor Downey.
Thank you. Through you, Chair, just a quick question, maybe an add-on for that report. Would it be possible to look at the feasibility of a water insurance for condo corps, apartment buildings, things like that? This is definitely not the first time we've seen this come before us. So if a condo corp is paying, a minimal fee that's added onto their monthly, in the case that then they're covered, just like any other type of insurance for these. It doesn't happen often, but it does happen, and we've had them come before us. So.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's appropriate to understand what the state of affairs are with regards to that. Councillor Dillon, you've heard the general direction. I believe Councillor Paleshi is willing to second that. Are you satisfied as it's been outlined by the clerk?
I'm okay. I was going to ask, it's actually Councillor Fortini's ward, so I wanted to see if he wanted to move it, but he's not here, so.
We'll carry on.
Okay, thanks.
Madam Clerk, do I need a recorded vote or direction by show of hands?
Referral to staff should just be show of hands.
Show of hands. All those in favor of that direction? And that carries. Sir, thank you very much for your presentation today. On to 7.3, Jasbir Singh, a resident of Brampton, with regards to concerns about a septic system. Mr. Singh? I see some folks. Is this Mr. Singh? Welcome, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. We have this septic tank issue neighbor beside my home, just west of my property. East of my property, south on countryside. There's one house, and we have this issue going on last 2 years almost. So we request so many times with the city of Brampton, and they sent someone to check it. So what happened when they came? City of Brampton said this issue is a region of Peel, and then the Peel region came. One of the inspector, then they said that this issue is the city of Brampton. So this is going prolonged almost 2 years. So we really having a problem to live there. There's a lot of smells, the mosquito in the summers, and we can't stand outside and can't it's not healthy right now. And plus the water is coming into my property and the grass is getting damaged. We can't do lawnmower and stuff. So we would like to have this issue to take care of as soon as possible.
So, Mr. Singh, thank you for your presentation. So in its simplest terms, you have a neighbor that has a septic system that may not be working properly and has failed, and you would like it investigated.
Yes, please.
Councillor Dillon.
Sorry, through you, Mr. Clerk, to Mr. Singh. Is it 3797? Is that the address?
3797 is my address.
Yeah.
Countryside.
So I'm just reading some of the emails, and essentially what it says is the septic tank is leaking on their lot, and our staff has, I'm not aware of it, I'm just going through some of the emails that my staff was working with, and so essentially some of the water's been leaking onto his property, Mr. Singh's property, and our staff has indicated that's a regional issue for whatever reason, and so perhaps if we could just, I can move that staff work with Mr. Singh to investigate the issue a little bit more.
Yes. Any other comment? Dr. Hopkins, you had a thought.
Thank you. Through the chair, I've spoken with Mr. Singh this morning. To the best of my knowledge, this is the first time public health has been involved in this issue. We are sending an inspector out today to review the property, and we will work with Mr. Singh on how to resolve this issue.
Yeah, thank you. And what I also like is, here it is before us, the agenda didn't list and address the neighbor, maybe unwittingly is unawares. And so I think as a courtesy, it's nice to go back to all the parties and see if it can be remediated amongst all the parties amicably. So it's being referred back to staff. We are aware of it, and we will be following up accordingly. Is that the direction through staff, through Councillor Dillon? That is direction. All those in favor, show of hands. That is carried. Sir, thank you very much for your presentation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, moving right along. That concludes the delegations. I'm on to staff presentations. Item 8.1, strategies to address the provincial funding cuts. And I'm bringing forward 9.2 at this time. Presentation by Norm Lum, Director of Business and Financial Planning. Welcome, Norm.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members of Regional Council. I'm here to provide an update on the impact of the provincial funding changes on the projected 2019 year end and the 2020 budget. So overall, combining both the tax and utility supported programs, the Region Appeal is projecting a year-end variance of 0.5%, or a surplus of $7.3 million. So within the target variance range of 1 to 3%, or plus or minus 3%. However, looking one level deeper shows two different stories. For the utility rate supported services on the right, there is a projected variance of 2%, or a surplus of $8.3 million. And this surplus is largely driven by a combination of two factors: higher than budgeted water consumption and savings from operations. For tax supported services, which includes the external agencies, a variance of negative 0.1% is projected, or a deficit of $1 million. The external agencies, Peel Regional Police, OPP, and the conservation authorities, are projecting a year-end surplus of $1.7 million. Regionally controlled services, however, are projecting a negative variance of 0.4%, or a deficit of $2.7 million. The deficit of $2.7 million consists of two major components. The first being operational items from a number of services driving surpluses, partially offset by lower than budgeted revenues from the sale of waste fiber. And the second being the impact of funding changes implemented by the province. So although the province had stated that there would be no retroactive changes to funding, there have still been impacts totaling $8.8 million to paramedic services, long-term care, homelessness prevention, and public health. For paramedic services, because there's a one-year lag for its funding, it will experience a provincial revenue shortfall of $4.9 million as its funding is being held at the level received in 2018, which is actually based on 2017 service levels. For long-term care, despite an announcement earlier in the year that there would be a 1.7% increase in overall funding, it will experience a decrease of $0.48 million in its overall funding envelope. For the Community Homelessness Prevention Initiative, the overall funding was decreased by $1.9 million. And finally, in public health, there will be a funding shortfall of $1.2 million. Therefore, for 2019, instead of forecasting what would be otherwise a $6.1 million surplus, region-controlled tax-supported programs are forecasting a deficit of $2.7 million due to changes in provincial funding. As Council may recall, through the 2019 budget presentation, staff had forecast an increase of 4.5% for 2020 before any announcements were made by the province. Based on what we understood on May 9th, provincial funding cuts would result in an additional 3.3% impact, for a total forecasted impact for 2020 of 7.8%. However, very few details were known then. To facilitate the planning and budget process in the interim, Council approved a net tax levy target of 2.9% before any impacts of provincial funding changes. Since May 9th, additional details have been released by the province. So based on what is understood today, the total impact of the provincial funding changes on the 2020 budget is $36.4 million, equivalent to a net tax levy impact of 3.4%. And the impact can be broken down into two general categories: $25.3 million decrease in the funding envelope, and a change in cost sharing of $11.1 million, effectively a download of provincial cost appeal. Over the next few slides, I will walk Council through three different strategies or scenarios to address the impact of the provincial funding cuts. In all three scenarios, Council will need to make some very difficult decisions. Under Scenario 1, to maintain current service levels, a total increase of 6.3% would be required. 1.3% to maintain current service levels and to meet increased service demand driven by population growth. 1% to maintain the infrastructure required to deliver approved service levels. 0.3% to support Council priorities, such as the implementation of the butterfly model, increased waste diversion, childcare, and affordable housing. And 0.3% for the grant to Mississauga for the Bolton Hub, and finally 3.4% to replace all provincial funding reductions. So 1% for the cost share increased appeal, and 2.4% for the funding envelope reduction. The 6.3% increase would advance the outcomes under Council's vision of a community for life. It would also maintain the existing service levels to a growing population and enable Council priorities. However, there are some tangible risks. The budgets approved through the 2020 budget process may form the base for future provincial levies on Peel for public health and paramedic services. In addition, it would mean that the provincial deficit is effectively being funded by Peel's property taxpayers. The 6.3% increase is also outside of the target affordable property tax range of 1 to 3%. Under Scenario 2, to achieve a budget target of 2.9%, service levels would have to be reduced by both the amounts of the funding envelope reductions and the change in the cost share to Peel. This would require service level reductions across all regionally controlled services in order to match the $36.4 million reduction in funding. So under this scenario, this would enable Council's previous net tax levy target of 2.9%, target that is in line with a long-term financial planning strategy for affordability. However, there would be significant risk to service levels. It would mean service level reductions in each of the 4 services impacted by funding reductions in their envelopes: childcare, paramedic services, long-term care, and employment support. It would also mean decreases in service levels in all other region-controlled services to fund the download of the province's share of costs to Peel. Scenario 3 is a hybrid of Scenario 1 and Scenario 2. Under this scenario, property taxes would be increased to fund the download of the cost share to Peel of $11.1 million, and where the province has announced funding envelope reductions, service levels would be reduced. Under Scenario 3, some service levels would be maintained, some community for life outcomes would be advanced, it would address some service demands due to population growth and support council priorities. However, this scenario would also mean slower progress towards achieving council's community for life outcomes and significantly reduce service levels in childcare, paramedic services, long-term care, and employment support. Staff are recommending that Scenario 3, with a budget impact of 3.9%, be used to guide the development of the 2020 budget, as it is an appropriate balance between affordability and service level risk. However, the risk to service levels is considered medium-high. Staff propose that the 4 services with provincial funding envelope reductions, childcare, paramedic services, long-term care, and employment support, provide council with more details on the risks and impacts to Peel's community of any required service level reductions. These reports would be provided to council prior to the 2020 budget deliberations. At this time, I'd like to point out to council that on page 8.1-5 of the report, it should read long-term care and not public health as one of the 4 services providing reports to council. Thank you. That concludes my presentation. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
And there are at this time, Councillor Vicente.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It's always challenging when an upper tier government starts reducing the allocations that it makes to a municipality and puts us, as it is now, under a lens where we're looking for savings. With respect to the Peel Renovate program, I know it's under review at the moment. What is the status of that review?
Through the chair, we are in the final stages of reviewing that grant program and several other grant programs, and we will be back to council in September with a recommendation.
Now, historically, on a yearly basis, how much does the Region of Peel spend on a program like Peel Renovates?
Through the chair, I will actually have to pull that information and get back to you.
Okay. Because we have a lot of residents who have been asking us about the status of that program, but you pointed out in your presentation that the fact that the program is on hold and has been on hold, I think, for the better part of the last year. Is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, that is correct.
That has, in effect, kind of provided some relief in terms of budget pressures over the past year. So when we look at programs like those, the fact that we've been able to do without them for a year, are there other programs in the Region of Peel that perhaps we could be taking a closer look at to find potential savings?
Through the chair, so we are doing a review of all of our grant programs, the Peel Renovates, Active Living, some other programs related to capacity building for nonprofits who are interested in new construction, to take a look and see if we are actually getting the outcomes that we had hoped for. So we have embarked on doing that just for the very reason that you said, to make sure that we are using the funding in the most outcome-driven way.
Okay. And with regards to Peel Renovates program as a specific example, is that fully funded by Peel Region tax base, or do we get funding from other tiers to help support that?
We have a couple of streams of Peel Renovates. I believe that there is some provincial funding related to that, but I will have to follow up and get back to you.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Mayor Brown.
You look at the cost pressure from the provincial cuts, it's quite significant. You look at the potential increase, it's the lion's share is this provincial downloading. I just want to put on everyone's horizon that obviously the advocacy work that was done earlier this year by organizations like LUMCO, that I'm part of along with Mayor Crombie, the advocacy work of some of the mayors like John Tory who are very outspoken on it, we're going to have to get into that mindset again. It's unacceptable that this burden from the province we placed on the backs of property tax owners. Property tax owners were not ever expected to be paying down the provincial debt. It's an easy route to download to another level of government, but it's not actually looking at your own house. And I think we need to be prepared to look at the type of pushback that we can do as this budget for next year grows closer. I assume the provincial government will revisit this. The temporary reprieve, I'm sure they know, is going to have the same people that pushed against the cuts initially will be back pushing again. What I'd like to know is what tools would we have? I know the City of Toronto said they were going to send out an interim, an updated tax bill. And so there's been some, council voted that they were going to do that, but I know we've had some feedback in the City of Brampton that you can't actually send out a second tax bill. It may just be more of a communications exercise. So I know the province didn't like that idea, the notion that their cost would be implicitly told to the residents, had significant opposition at Queen's Park, because then residents would know they're responsible for this burden. They're responsible for this tax increase. And frankly, if they're the ones responsible, well, let's make it perfectly clear to residents who's responsible. So what tools do we have? I know that the tax bill is regulated by legislation, provincial legislation of what can be included. What tools do we have to let the public know who exactly is putting this burden on them?
Anyone from staff can help us out with that? Stephen?
Thank you, and through the chair, for the question. We are limited by legislation what we can do with supplementary tax bills. We are creatures of the province after all, so that only makes some sense. I think the public campaign that we started, I think to your point, is something that if council wishes, as we get closer, right now the government's not sitting. So I'm not sure who's going to be listening at this point in time during the summer, but maybe they will be. But I think certainly the public campaign and relaunching that or launching a version of that at some point in time between now and when the budget comes forward to the region, the regional budget comes forward, we're going to be doing our budget long before the province sets its next budget. So I'm not sure, we're uncertain at this point in time when the province will confirm with municipalities their funding for next year. I don't imagine they want to get put in a position where they're accused of doing a retroactive cut again. So I suspect we'll hear before our budgets, one would hope, in terms of what their funding levels would be. So advocating with the province prior to our budget would be helpful.
And you said something quickly there about a supplementary tax bill. Did you say we can't do a supplementary tax bill?
We're limited on, I don't think at this stage, I'm looking back to our treasurer, and the advice we've got from also working with the local municipalities is that we cannot issue a formal supplementary tax bill to cover this cost.
But we could send out a letter to all residents saying that this portion of their property taxes is due because of a provincial downloading.
Council certainly can, and staff can certainly work with council to send out a bill or a letter that resembles a bill to help drive home that point.
Okay, thank you. And I think that's something we need to all be thinking about.
Thank you. Councillor Parrish.
I think this is interesting because we already suffer from not enough funding or not our fair share of funding according to 20 years of struggling with it. So now we're getting hit harder. I think it's important messing around in politics is probably not a good thing for us, but they can't do any more damage to us. The local MPP in Malton wanted to get up on the stage and be introduced at Canada Day, and the BIA told him that he wasn't welcome. So he threw a little tantrum and he was leaping around doing jumping jacks in the audience saying, "I'm not invited." So I went over to him and I said, "I'd be happy to invite you up on the stage and I will introduce you as the gentleman who helped make the teachers' cuts, the health cuts." And I was listing them all for him and he goes, "All right, I'll just stay down here." And it's funny, but he wasn't amused. And then, of course, Bonnie got a call from the Premier's office saying that he wanted an apology from me. And I said, "Give me the number and I'll call." And she said, "No, you'll do more damage." But there's got to be a way. There's got to be a way. I can remember back when I was on council the first time, we were fortunate enough to be going into a provincial election when they did all kinds of crappy stuff to us. So we went down to see Mr. Sorbera with Emil Kolb, and I suggested that a few of us would run as independent Liberals in the region of Peel. We probably wouldn't win, but we would make sure the Liberal didn't win. And magically, they got rid of the downloading that they were, or the transfer payments they were making us due to Toronto. It was a promise in that election. So sometimes you have to be rude, and I'm pretty good at it. But I think the Government Relations Committee should put their heads together. And you know who else was really good at it? Hazel. I can remember when I chaired the Peel Board, we had a terrible tax year. We used to be able to set local taxes. We went up 16% that year, which the school board has thanked us for ever since because it raised the base level and they've been able to do fine ever since. But Hazel put it on in red in a line on the tax bill. This is the school board money, go after them sort of thing. So I think we have to start thinking outside the box and outside the nice, polite little local politicians, and we have to start getting a little bit rough with them. I also think we should send this report to the federal candidates so that they have some equipment to work on when they're fighting back at what's going on in the province of Ontario. But those are just my little wisdom lees.
Thank you. Councillor Sinclair.
Yes, a question. I don't know if Mr. Lum is the correct person. Are there pieces of correspondence from the province specifically directing the reduction of childcare, paramedics, long-term care, and employment support? Do we have correspondence telling us to do that?
Through the chair, we have received funding announcements previously in terms of these programs. This is where we're getting the numbers from. These are based on 2020 estimates. The province only deferred the 2019 retroactive cuts. So we're reasonably confident that these numbers at this point in time are sticking in terms of what their forecast is. The province didn't go back and change its budget after it announced the reversal of and really what they reversed was the cost share formula change. But that was, it's our belief that that's a deferral of that decision, not a reversal on a permanent basis.
Okay, there's, I guess what I'm concerned with is, I guess it's 8.1-4, Table 2, and it says region-controlled services that the province has chosen to reduce. So I would expect there'd be some correspondence from the province specifically identifying those 4 areas of cuts. So is there such correspondence?
Through the chair, maybe I can help clarify. My understanding is we have received some letters confirming funding reductions. I think we had received a letter for long-term care. We've received a letter for childcare. The paramedics is a little bit more complicated in that it's not a funding reduction relative to last year. What they've done is frozen the dollars from a couple of years ago. So I guess technically it's not a reduction, but if we're being informed that the funding is frozen, it's not funding the growth in the service for 2018, and it's not funding the growth in the service from last year for 2019. So the shortfall that we'll experience in 2020 is estimated to be about $6 million, a little bit higher than that.
Okay, is it possible for members of council to obtain copies of these pieces of correspondence?
Yeah, through the chair, certainly.
I'm following along on Councillor Parrish's comments that we have to become more direct. And I guess for myself, when I'm direct, I like to do my homework and have something to base it on clearly. I have a question also then. There's been reference in previous council meetings this year about a communication strategy to residents. Is that still on? Because it looks to me as if by the time we hit budgets, we're going to need that very clearly.
I think perhaps the CAO will answer, but I think we've given that some thought, and I think we're in a pause, wait and see when's the best next time to come back to council on your direction, but perhaps the CAO can fill in on that as well.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are proceeding with the campaign related to paramedics and public health, as it was directed by council. And that campaign is going to be a soft launch using, based on council's recommendations, using social media. So we will be contacting you actually very soon to ask you to post the campaign on your own social media feeds to really extend the reach that we have. As for a more general, the more general campaign that we had anticipated when the funding cuts were going to be implemented for 2019 retroactively, we've put that one on hold. That's council's direction, but it can be quite easily resurrected and re-implemented. And I'd recommend that council wait until we report back in probably September with the implications of scenario 3 so that we can put some meat on those advocacy bones and use specific examples. But we are pushing ahead with the paramedic and public health advocacy campaign.
Right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Mayor Crombie.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So the retroactive cuts are on hold right now, correct?
Yes, I mean, part of the, through the chair, the complication is when they're freezing funding that prior years. So it's not technically a reduction in the amount you received last year. They're just holding it at that amount, so it doesn't recognize increased costs for the next few years.
The increases. So we also know that this government is quite sensitive to any negative pushback, and they've retracted their positions a number of times. So perhaps once we get our campaign and the other members of AMO, large urban mayors, et cetera, Association of Municipalities of Ontario, they'll reconsider. I'm also quite hopeful that clearer minds will prevail in the fall after the House returns in November, because the economy is strong right now, and I think they're going to see an increase in revenue in their accounts. Job creation's never been higher, and unemployment is low, and the economy is actually quite strong. So I'm hoping things will turn around and we may not have to face these cuts come the new year. What I would suggest we do is prepare, get the facts, put it in a very succinct format for us for the AMO meetings that are coming up in August, and we'll have an opportunity to speed date with the finance minister and all the other cabinet ministers, and maybe we can lay it out very succinctly for them what format these cuts will take and how meaningful they will be for us, $34 million, and what programs would be affected. Butterfly program, none of us would like to see that cut, of course. Malton Youth Hub, another one affecting youth, seniors, youth, childcare funding, paramedics. These are bread and butter issues for people. They care about these items. So we need to get the facts, and then we do need to tell people. But first, I think we need to present the case to the ministers on what the impact to the residents would look like. At the last Large Urban Mayors Caucus, Mayor Brown and I were both there, and I think it was the Burlington Mayor, Mary Ann Mead Ward, she was suggesting that a levy be put on the next tax bill, saying the Ford government levy, called it that outright. So I know that the minister pushed back to that a little bit, but they are sensitive to pushback. So we do have to present our case. We have to do it united with the other municipalities, the other cities in Ontario, and if all else fails, then we do take our case to the people and let them know why. It's in fact, they're trying to show restraint, and then we are the ones that have to make the cuts, and we're the ones that look very bad to the people. But it's not our fault, so we'll have to show our residents that we do care, and we wouldn't have made these cuts notwithstanding what the provincial government has done. But I'm very hopeful that come November, the economy will improve and maybe they will have a change of heart. There seems to be a lot of change going on at Queen's Park and certainly in the Premier's office, and cabinet shuffles, and maybe we'll get different input and take a different direction. You can always have hope, right? Thank you. But in the meantime, I'd like to direct staff that we prepare for our AMO packages, some messaging on how the cuts will affect us, and we can deliver those messages to the cabinet ministers we meet with. Thank you.
And thank you, Mayor Crombie. You'll be interested to know staff are doing exactly that. In fact, I have noted a briefing section that we'll be having with staff leading up to the info conference. Those that are attending, that those very issues will be uppermost in our thoughts. Okay, moving on. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And my esteemed colleague to my right has said that Mayor Crombie found a steaming pile of poop under your Christmas tree and then went looking for a pony. So I'm glad your glass is half full on this one. Thank you, Norm, for your presentation, I think.
You can't get that visual.
You can't get the visual out. All right, I'll just let that sit with y'all. The 2.7 million operating deficit, are we going to draw down on reserves to cover that amount?
Through the chair, yes. When we get to year end and we look at where we are, we have the capacity to draw on working fund reserves to offset the deficit.
Okay, because we're still in July, are there plans within the individual departments to perhaps defer certain projects or reduce expenditures in some areas, knowing that this in-year deficit is going to be projected?
Through the chair, yes. I mean, typically when we look at T1 results, there's more opportunities in the last 8 months to look for ways to save. So this is a preliminary report based on what we know as of April 30th.
Okay. And for the regionally controlled services that the province is reducing, as we move through the budgeting process, I'm assuming it's like a balloon, so if we reduce in one area, we could move some funding over to some of these other key priority areas. Is that possible?
Through the chair, through the budget process, all region dollars are at the discretion of council to move around. There definitely would be service level risks to the ones where it's moved from, but it's definitely under council's authority to change those.
Okay, and your recommendation today is to move forward with scenario 3, which is a 3.9% increase, correct? And we've been, at Mississauga, we had our first budget meeting, a couple of weeks ago now, and we were looking at, I think, was it 4.9% increase? So we're going to have to do the math on that one, but it is, I think, with both the increases from the city and from the region, it's becoming an unaffordable tax increase this year. So we're going to have to make some changes at both the city and the region to get those further reductions. And in some cases, we may not be able to. So I would support any communications plan that tries to hopefully make some changes and change of mind at the provincial level, so we can so we don't have to make cuts to those priority programs. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Santos.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair, and echoing all of the comments from my colleagues around the table, especially on the advocacy side. But I will argue that even though it is federal election time, the province is paying attention. Certainly, they decided not to resume the business of the House until after the federal election because of the pressure that's being placed on the provincial level from their respective federal party. So I think it is actually a good time because at the end of the day, residents, there's only one taxpayer, and the residents are paying attention in the federal election. They don't necessarily, for the most part, the majority don't know the difference between municipal, regional, provincial, and federal government. And I would bet that while candidates are canvassing, they're going to be asked about municipal municipal issues. And so we might as well be part of that conversation and continue to put the pressure using the federal election as leverage as well. One final thing I will add, Councillor Sato and I were having a side conversation about creative ideas to communicate this to various federal MPs. And what about we send, on behalf of residents, a thank you card for a potential upcoming tax increase on their property taxes. So like using a little bit of humor, but making it and calling out what this is and the impact at the various municipal, but also the regional, obviously, levels. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sato.
Thank you. And Councillor Santos was saying about the card, and I had said to her, when I tweet or Facebook, my final statement on all of my comments on this is, so send a thank you to your MPP for your tax hike, your potential tax hike. And, you know, I guess what frustrates me, and I don't think being nice to them, you know, thinking that maybe if we're not nice, they'll do something worse. I'm not sure what worse they can do. And I don't think it matters what we do. They're going to do, the province is going to do whatever they want so that they can look good and then brag about it. And I think that's what infuriates me the most. My MPP just tweeted this morning that, we're doing wonderful things for a senior strategy. And my response back to her was, well, if you want a senior strategy, stop cutting long-term care, you know, and the other health services. So I think we need to stop individually. I think we need to stop letting them get away with this on social media, because quite frankly, I'm fed up with seeing the little videos, you know, that look, here's what we're doing, little short snippets, you know, like they did with the gas thing and the beer in the corner store. You know, and it's like, these aren't important things, people, you know. The important things are, and it's camouflaging the fact that they are making cuts that are going to have a very serious impact on the most vulnerable parts of our population. And, you know, a lot of people, unless they need long-term care, may not be thinking to that degree. But I think if you tell people that, you know, paramedic services could be cut to the point where, you know, if you call for an ambulance, there may not be one. That's, you know, we use that if, you know, with fire. If you cut fire services or police services, are you prepared to do without the service that when you need it, you might be the one who doesn't get it? So, you know, I like the idea of sending the card. I'm going to keep doing my thank your MPP. And, but I don't think residents, even if they get a tax bill next year that's a 3.9 or a 6.3, they are not going to blame their MPP. Mm-hmm. They're going to blame us. Mm-hmm. They are going to blame us, and we know that. It doesn't matter what we do. We could be doing all of this stuff. Mm-hmm. They are still going to say, you could have done something to not increase the taxes. You should have made cuts. So, you know, I'm not sure what we can do except as we're dealing with the tax bill for 2020 and dealing with the budget for 2020. We do a lot of social media. We do a lot of getting a lot of stuff out there. I'm a little less supportive of doing mail-outs. A lot of people don't read things that are in their tax bill or in their other bills. We can put it on the front page of our newsletters if we have newsletters coming out in the fall. I know mine's coming out in the fall. You know, make it big headlines, and doing things like that. But, you know, at the end of the day, I think we need to expect that it's going to be the City of Mississauga councillors, the City of Brampton, Caledon councillors, and the Region of Peel. We're the ones that are going to we're going to be the fall guys for these cuts. And so let's just keep individually using our social media accounts. And, you know, every time my MPP or any of the MPPs puts out a thing about, you know, how great they are, I'm going to start responding now and telling them, no, you're not that great. These are the cuts, and this is what the impact is. And I don't have a rosy feeling of that, you know, things are going to ease up in September. I think they're just going to keep doing what they're doing because they think it makes them look good. And they have someone else to take the blame.
Okay, good conversation. I have a resolution with regards to the conversation. It'll be moved by Mayor Crombie, seconded by Councillor Rass, I think, that the staff works towards a revised budget target of 3.9%, and further that the four services as outlined in the report from the Commissioner of Finance and Chief Financial Officer entitled Strategies to Address the Provincial Funding Cuts be reported back to Regional Council prior to budget deliberations with the service level impacts resulting from the provincial funding reductions. You've heard the motion. I need a recorded vote, please. And that carries. Thank you. Moving on, item 8.2, New Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program, presentation by Dr. Jessica Hopkins, our Medical Officer of Health, and Fahim Rashid, a dental consultant. Welcome.
Good morning. Thank you so much. Dr. Rashid and I are going to be talking about the current Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program, as well as the upcoming Provincial Dental Program, which is new to the province. So I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Rashid to walk you through the slide deck.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you to the Chair and to Council for allowing me the opportunity to provide you all with updates on the current Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program and some information on the new provincial program that will be launched in late summer 2019. To date, basic information about the new program has been shared by the province. However, there are still details that are unknown, and we will share those with you in future Council meetings as they become available. The Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program has been providing access to dental care to low-income seniors in Peel at no cost since 2008. In addition to providing access, the program seeks to improve senior oral health status and quality of life by eliminating pain and improving their function. And by providing this access is helping reduce the burden on the healthcare system. Approximately 12,000 seniors have had access to the program since it began, and about 800 seniors are provided access each year. Our current program is 100% regionally funded, with a 2019 budget of $1.68 million. When the program first started, services were provided by fee-for-service private dental providers. In January 2013, the community health centers, two of them in Peel, Brampton and East Mississauga, received funding to treat eligible seniors at their dental clinics. And working with our community health center partners has been a cost-effective method of delivering services. A proportion of our seniors still continue to be seen through fee-for-service dentists and specialists. Seniors qualify for one full course of dental treatment once per lifetime, which includes services that help remove pain and infection and restore reasonable function. In April 2019, with the release of the provincial budget, the government announced $90 million in funding for the new Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program. In May 2019, staff learned that Peel Public Health is expected to receive $3.9 million in operational funding. A funding letter confirming this amount was received. Public health units were also informed that they have the opportunity to apply for one-time capital funding to increase dental services to underserviced areas. This is important given that the new program will only be delivered through public dental clinics and not through fee-for-service community dental providers. The funds that will be made available can be used to build or expand public health infrastructure, such as to build new clinics or to get a new dental bus, as well as to expand community health centers. This opportunity will be available this year only and will help meet current and future needs of seniors in Peel. To support the funding application, staff are completing a needs assessment for seniors in Peel to ensure equitable access to dental services. With limited information made available from the province about the new program, it is difficult to draw a thorough comparison with our current program. However, you will note in this slide that, 1, income thresholds for eligibility differ. The provincial program allows for more couples but less singles to access dental care. This is important because some seniors that were eligible will no longer be eligible with the new program, and this needs to be considered as we transition to the new program. We must ensure that no waitlisted or enrolled senior loses access to care because of this transition. 2, eligible seniors can access the provincial program more than once and anywhere in Ontario, and this is an improvement over the current program. 3, and again, fee-for-service private dentists are not delivering services for the new program. And 4, from an operational perspective, the role of public health will change to include more client navigation and service delivery as opposed to planning and administration. The ministry has proposed a timeline for implementation of the new program. Currently, we are in the pre-implementation phase, where we are having initial conversations with our community health center partners, planning strategically with our neighboring public health units, and planning for the one-time capital funding application. The next stage, which is scheduled for late summer, early fall 2019, includes initial program implementation through existing dental infrastructure. Capital builds are also expected to commence around that time. And finally, the second stage of implementation is to begin in winter 2020. And at that time, it is expected that capital builds and procurement will be complete. The introduction of a new provincial seniors dental program brings with it opportunities, and these include 1, the ability to apply for one-time capital funds to expand infrastructure, 2, to build on existing relationships with our local partners, our community health centers, as well as to fund the dental clinic at the Four Corners Health Centre in Malton, and 3, to work strategically with other health units to ensure optimal and equitable access across local jurisdictions and the province. The existing regional program is well positioned to transition to the provincial program, given public health's experience in delivering a dental program for seniors. To support transition, staff recommend accepting no further seniors to the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program waitlist. This will allow staff to begin planning for transition of the current regional program to the new provincial program when launched, and an implementation date has not yet been announced. Staff will be reporting back to Council on the transition plan, including costs, once we receive more program details from the province. And so, based on the information we have, staff recommend that the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program stop accepting applications to the program waitlist, and that seniors currently enrolled or on the program waitlist who do not meet the provincial eligibility criteria be provided treatment through the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program, and further that the Region of Peel implement the new Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program based on the provincial implementation date. As mentioned, Peel Public Health has received a letter confirming the $3.9 million in base funding prorated for the 2019-2020 funding year, and the 2020 budget will include provisions for the operations of a fully provincially funded seniors dental program and implications to the regional tax levy. Thank you very much, and we're happy to take any questions that you may have.
Yes, Councillor Parrish.
Yes, thank you. I'm very proud of Peel for having brought this in years ago before the province recognized how important it was. I guess they've decided people that are over 65 vote, and this is one of the programs that survived. I don't remember what we put in per year. What was the 2019 budget item for our seniors program?
Through the chair, it is $1.7 million.
So if they're putting in 3.9, is that 1.7 that we usually spend not a savings on our budget?
Through the chair, based on the plan that we are presenting in the long term, it will be. We are recommending that we grandfather the seniors who would fall between that gap, and it'll take about 2 years for us to get them through the program, and then after that, that would be removed from the regional portion.
Okay, and when the rules say any resident of Ontario, does that mean people in Halton where it's not set up yet will come pouring into Peel?
Through the chair, that is correct. That is one of the concerns that we have with neighboring health units that do not have current programs. And so we are working to, we will be putting in an application for capital to try to expand what is happening here. And we are working closely with our neighboring health units in order to try and ensure that there is service available for people in their own communities.
Okay, and the way we do the private practitioners, and they bill us and we pay them on a scale, is, I don't see that in here. Is that going to be allowed?
Through the chair, unfortunately, the ministry has not allowed for fee-for-service dental providers within our program. We are advocating with the ministry that that be part of the program because they have been an important part of the seniors dental program in Peel, and we would like to continue to work with them.
Well, that's a lot less expensive. You get more dental care and less building and cement and hardcore stuff that just sits there. So I hope you are successful with that, and I'm hoping we really advocate for that. I like the idea of the multiple or the yearly care instead of once in a lifetime, because I'm due to go to the dentist myself, and you can't predict. You can't fix it now forever. I don't particularly like the idea that you're not taking any more people on the seniors wait list. I think having them on the wait list is one thing, treating them is another, and I can understand the break you want to take in treating, but I think we should still be accepting people on the wait list. I think there's people that know about the program. It took us a long time to make the seniors aware of it, and if they want to apply, I think an application with an answer that says we have to wait until the Ontario program clicks in might be a good response, but keep taking the names. If you need a motion to that, I would do it.
Thank you, Councillor Starr.
I'm sorry, a point of clarification. On the chart that shows the income levels, the threshold, are those gross incomes or are they taxable incomes? How does that work?
Through the chair, they're after-tax incomes.
They're what?
After tax.
After tax?
Yes.
Okay. And Councillor Parrish asked a couple of the same questions, but for clarification again, can somebody currently, say from Shelburne, apply to have help here or assistance here?
So through the chair, under the current Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program, only residents of Peel are eligible. Under the new provincial program, which will begin end of summer, early fall, it will be any resident of Ontario who is eligible to access care at any public dental office across Ontario.
So once that's implemented, that person from Shelburne can come to Peel?
Through the chair, you are correct.
Okay, great. Thank you for the clarification.
Thank you. That exhausts my list. Councillor Parrish, this is the motion that I'd like you to move because of all the advocacy you've done on the file, and I want to make sure it's satisfactory to you because you had another clause perhaps. So moved by Councillor Parrish, seconded by Councillor Starr, that the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program stop accepting applications to the program waiting list, though I know you may have a thought on that, and further that seniors currently enrolled or on the program waiting list who do not meet the provincial eligibility criteria be provided treatment through the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program. And finally, that the Region of Peel implement the new Ontario Seniors Dental Care Program based on the provincial implementation date. Councillor Parrish.
Well, I would just change the first paragraph. I agree with not servicing them and keeping the list, but I think we should keep the list going.
Oh.
Allow applications, make sure people know that they're going to be at maybe a 2-year wait. But
yes.
I would I don't want to cut off. It's taken a long time to educate people into knowing they can apply.
And thank you. The CAO, just a thought on that?
And it's really a practical question because the difference between our program and the new provincial program is we administer the program locally. Under the new provincial program, it's going to be all administered provincially. So would it be, is that correct?
Through the chair, yes, you're correct. So one of the ways I could see this happening then is because we want those people to be able to access the program as well, is that we take their names down and then we contact them in late summer, early fall when the new provincial program is up and running, and we can and then that way we can direct them into the new program and that they know it'll be more proactive as opposed to saying just call us back in September. We will follow up with them.
That's perfect.
Okay. And I think the clerk is working on that as we speak, but I want to make sure we get the words right.
And, Mr. Chair, could we also add a fourth directive, even though we are doing it, is to continue advocating for the private practitioners setup that we have here in Peel? It's much cheaper for the province. It's much cheaper for everybody.
And continue advocating for the private practitioners process now underway in Peel. Words along those lines. Okay, that's fourth clause is clear. Madam Clerk, if you could just reread the first clause as amended. When you get to it. Go ahead, please.
That the Region of Peel Seniors Dental Program program create a list of names to refer to the provincial program when it starts.
Councillor Parrish, that's
That's
acceptable to
fine.
you? Very good.
I understand from
Very good.
the presenters that that's what they'll do.
Thank you. That's been moved by Councillor Parrish, seconded by Councillor Starr. I need a recorded vote, please. And that carries. Thank you. Which brings us to item 8.3, update on the Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area Capital Project. For information, there is a presentation by Janice Hatton, the project manager. Janice, welcome.
Good morning, Regional Council, staff, and members of the public. It is my privilege today to provide you an update on the Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area, formerly known as the Lakeview Waterfront Connection. We are approaching year 3 of construction and would like to share how well construction is proceeding. For those of you who may not be familiar with the project, we are creating a new 64-acre natural waterfront park on the eastern shoreline of Mississauga using clean fill from Peel Capital Works projects. This project is being implemented through a partnership between the Region of Peel, Credit Valley Conservation, and Toronto and Region Conservation. This slide shows the true size and scope of this project when compared to other waterfront parks. To the west, and sort of to the bottom left corner of this slide, you will note Lakefront Promenade Park. And to the east, towards the upper right corner of the slide, you will note Colonel Sam Smith Park. Peel's investment is not only a major gain for the environment with the creation of large coastal wetlands, forests, and beach habitat, but is also a recreational amenity with the extension of the waterfront trail and additional secondary trails for the community to enjoy and be able to connect to the water. On November 18 of 2016, we were about to begin construction in the lake. We had just received our last and long-awaited permit. And the next day, we began loading concrete into the lake. It was an exciting day. By mid-June, it was a very different story. We had completed our first construction cell and were busy filling the cell with clean fill. We build construction cells or confinement cells out of concrete rubble, which are isolated from the lake. This cell was completed by late March and filling began in early April. By early October, the next construction cell was completed, and already a significant portion of cell 1 had been filled. By April 2018, Cell 3A was finished. Fill from Peel Capital Works projects were filling the construction cells quickly. In July of 2018, we were ready to begin construction cells 3B, the largest of our construction cells, and Cell 4A. This was made possible in part by our neighbors, the Lakeview Community Partners, who supplied close to 37,000 cubic meters of concrete rubble. I don't have any recent drone footage to show you of the site, to show you the remaining progress, but I can tell you that Cell 4B Cell 4A, was completed in early August of 2018. Cell 4B was completed in early November of 2018. And finally, Cell 3B was completed by mid-January of this year. So what does the Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area look like today? Excavation of Surson Creek through the land portion is almost complete. The remaining Surson Creek wetland habitat features and plantings will be complete by the end of this month. To date, 1,000 trees and 20,000 aquatic plants have been planted, and there is always positive interest by visitors on site. Speaking of visitors, we've already seen a number of wildlife species on site. Of particular interest, we've seen an otter, snowy owl, frog, and snake. I guess it's true what they say, if you build it, they will come. It's surprising that this is happening already in what we affectionately term the ugly duckling phase of our project. But it really does demonstrate the need for habitat, proper habitat for these species. Some of you may be aware of the late Jim Tovey's idea of photographing construction on site and creating a fusion between art and construction. His idea was first seen on display in January of 2018, and it is known as morphology. Prints are captured on an annual or biannual basis, and the latest prints were shown on display to coincide with World Water Day in March 22nd of this year. I would like to invite council, staff, and members of the public to visit our own Peel Art Gallery and Museum anytime between now and November 3rd to review a selection of morphology prints on display. I will conclude my presentation with a future viewscape of the Jim Tovey Lakeview Conservation Area. Past the ugly duckling phase, we see plants successfully established, wildlife enjoying their new habitat, and members of the public using the trails and enjoying the waterfront. Thank you for your time today.
Thank you. I have a list. Councillor Dasko.
Thank you, and through the chair, this was a great update. Thank you very much. And we had the occasion to get down. There's a picture from a select group of us. We had Councillor Matt Mahoney and Councillor Raz. Select people as well came down through CVC tour just a little while ago, and it was incredible to see the morphing, if you will, of the whole project. I just wanted to mention, you mentioned morphology, and that's kind of a near and dear thing to Jim and Lee Tovey, and that was the last actual public event that Jim did before his untimely passing. They did one this past year, as you had alluded to, and the next one is going to actually, we're going to miss a year and then come back a year later to give an update. Incredible work that's gone on. Getting the update from yourself and from other folks, it's incredible to see, and just to go down there and see the amount of trucks that are whizzing down the street to go and dump all this stuff into the lake there is pretty incredible. And from what I understand, the cell that you're working on right now is a little bit more of a challenging one, just because of sometimes when there's an easterly kind of wind and waves that are coming in, it can be a little bit challenging to do, but you guys are doing great work, and I also wanted to give a thanks and shout out to the Lakeview Partners for working in conjunction to make this all happen. So just want to say thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raz.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and through you to Janice, thank you very much for your update. We get quite a few updates on the CVC side, so it's nice to see this true partnership working. And as Councillor Dasko mentioned, with the fill from Lakeview Partners, it's certainly expedited this project. And I know you've had some challenges this year with the high water levels, but it's so amazing to see the work that it's being done quickly. And it's funny, for those of you who aren't familiar with that area of Mississauga, we'll get some people posting on social media saying, oh, the high density is coming, the work's already started. It's like, hold on, we're actually building a conservation area here, which is pretty phenomenal. And once they figure out what exactly is being done, because it does look like heavy construction, it's hard to imagine that these that all this fill and all these dump trucks are actually creating what is going to be a conservation area. So this is pretty amazing, and I don't think it's too often where you actually get to create a conservation area. And I'm thankful to be able to see the progress, and I'm sure you're thankful to be part of it. So thank you to all the city councillors and mayors at this table who supported this project. Thank you.
Well said. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have receipt moved by Councillor Dasco, seconded by Councillor Rass. All those in favor, show of hands. Thank you very much. That brings me down to items 9, related to enterprise programs, to be chaired by Councillor Fonseca.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Item 9.1, procurement activity report was held, I believe, by Councillor Parrish or Councillor Rass. I'm not sure who held, or maybe both. Councillor Parrish.
Speak. That would be a charming thing to do. Thank you. I'm curious on page 9.110, where we look at the financial and scenario analysis of services for regional governance review. It's in there at $225,000, but the actual cost was $259,899. When you do these reports, do they come through with the procurement number or the actual number? Because that's about a 13% increase. So if they're all like that, it could be a lot higher than what we're looking at.
Thank you for the question, and through the chair. Yes, you're quite correct. When we report on these procurements, we report on the initial contract value. And in some cases, there are increases, and when they're significant enough, they do come to council for approval. And when they are within a certain value that are permitted under the bylaw and our procedures, staff have authority to initiate those contract increases. But you're quite right in that the initial contract values are what is reported in the report.
So if you were looking at the total amount for everything at $107,434,659.60, is it fair to assume that's going to be higher in the end?
There may be some that are higher in the end. So I may draw your attention, for example, to Appendix 3, 9.1-11 of the report. And you'll see, for example, there's a category that is called final contract payments. So sometimes there is a need to increase contracts for certain reasons, and we have the authority in the bylaw and the procedures to do that to a certain limit, above which we would come to council. So for an example, this is a situation where we've reported a $12,000 increase to a particular contract. If you see it right at the bottom of that schedule.
I see that, but you didn't record an increase to the financial scenario analysis services, the Deloitte one.
That's right, because that was within a certain approval value, and in fact, that particular increase was approved by council. Council actually approved an increase to the Deloitte contract to enable Deloitte to come back to council to present.
I have questions about that too, but I'll bring it up at another time because I looked at the original procurements and it stated clearly in there that the contract would include coming to council. And then what happened was when they came to council, they were another $16,000. So that's something I will ask at another time. The non-competitive contracts approved under delegated authority should be noted because you've got an amount there of over $2 million, but I can't tell which ones they are when I go through it. So maybe in a future report, you could put an asterisk beside those and say these are procurements that are non-competitive, so that we do?
Yeah.
Where did I miss it?
9.1-10.
Okay, so that's that whole set under there. Okay, sorry, I missed that. Thirdly, I remember Councillor Sato suggesting at some point that we refer the procurement, non-competitive awarded procurements to the Policy and Procedures Committee, and I would like to make sure that that happens. This report could go as a good basis for that, but I think we'll be looking at that in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raz. Oh, sorry, did the CAO have a thought on that?
Thank
Go ahead.
you, Councillor Rass.
My apologies. Thank you.
So I just, not on that last specific point, but I did want to point out that when work, especially on the capital side, and most of these procurements are large capital projects, we report back, and we do it under the triannual financial reporting report. So on page 9, report 9, page 9, sorry, report 9.2, page 7, we report back that we have completed 25 projects. No, sorry. We completed a number of projects, maybe I'm on the wrong page here, and returned, I think it was, yes, sorry. Of the total 1258 capital control projects, 48 were completed during the first 4 months, with $8.9 million unspent funds returned to reserves. So not all contracts that are let, I mean, some of these contracts are pay out over a number of years, the large ones. Not all of them go over. I mean, many of them, especially the large construction ones, come under. And we report back on that in a different report. We report back in the triannual. So this report is to report on what was awarded, and then we report back during the triennial reports on outcomes, operating costs and capital costs.
Okay, thank you for that. I'll go to Councillor Ross on the board, and then I don't see anyone else at the moment, but maybe make final comments after that.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Chair. A question to staff on this report. For item number 8, in the first section, there's a contract related to the supply of electricity for the regional municipality. And I'm just wondering what exactly is that for? I don't understand.
Yeah, through the chair, thank you for the question. We used to have a contract with Direct Energy, and we only worked with one vendor to procure electricity. So what we've done is gone out to seek a brokerage service. So we spend about $48 million a year on electricity. So now we use a brokerage service to every time we do auctions to buy electricity at lower rates. So this will more than pay for itself.
Okay, thank you. That makes sense. The other one, item number 12, review of functions and roles within the Integrated Business Support Division. Is a report like that, does that come before council once it's completed?
Through the chair, that is a report that we are doing within a division of Human Services to look at the efficiencies, the staffing levels, and whether or not it continues to focus on those functions it should. A report such as that would not come to council, although you may see some implications of it if there were position savings. But the actual detail of that report would not come to council.
Okay, I'll think about that one. And the other question, where'd it go? Oh, item number 48, the supply and delivery of electric vehicles for the region of Peel. How many electric vehicles did this result in? Maybe Andrew can get back to me.
I would say offhand, I don't know offhand. I'll have to get back to you.
Okay, can you get back to me on that one? And there was, oh, darn it. I did have one more question, but I can't find out where it was. I will just go back directly to staff, Madam Chair, when I figure out what that was. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Pleshy.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on the road salt haulage services, I got you, Councillor Perez. And then coupled with the emergency salt purchase from the same vendor, that emergency salt purchase, was that salt in those trucks? Is that together but separate? Did they haul that emergency salt?
So I can recognize that seems a little unclear. So we, as other municipalities would in City Brampton, would had a real hard time getting salt, and we were running dangerously low. So we contacted the vendor and asked for emergency shipments. So that's hauling to us. That got us over a hump. Realized pretty quickly that hump was not ending. So we set up a purchase order with that vendor as a backup to a regular vendor going forward that we could use. Rather than having emergencies come and go, we have a small PO we can use. The good part about it is the current vendor is crediting us back any difference of having to use it.
Okay, and then on a go-forward basis, when there's, and I realize this winter was difficult for salt purchases, but on a go-forward basis, have we put anything in future contracts or looked at opportunities to ensure that we don't have to go above and or outside when we're collecting salt? We're probably one of the biggest salt producers that any vendor is looking to get into business with. So do we have those assurities in there?
Correct, through the chair. So we have a pretty strong contract, which is why we're able to recoup the costs. Going forward, when we do our next contract, this one is a couple years old, so I'm guessing it's a couple more years to go. We've got a few lessons learned that we have to make sure.
Okay.
This was unprecedented this year, and we
Yes.
don't expect it in future years.
Okay, thanks, Adam. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Okay, thank you. And Councillor Parrish.
Yes, under the bylaws, we don't have to, you don't have to report contracts up to 100,000. Is there also a possibility that we could get a total of the approved by delegated authority of contracts up to 99,000?
Through the chair, as a rolled up dollar value as opposed to a split out, yes, I think we can do that.
Okay,
We can
thank
do
you.
that.
You can just get that back to me. Thanks.
Okay, seeing no further speakers on the board, this was an item for information. There was some direction from a number of councillors, and could have a mover, Councillor Ross, seconded by Councillor Paleshi, and this is a recorded vote, correct? It is not. Oh, because it's for information. All hands, all in favor. And that is carried. We also have one item, I had noted two, but 10 items of communication to be held. 10.1, a letter from Carrie Hurd, General Manager, Corporate Services and Town Clerk, Town of Caledon. Referral to Finance recommended. Councillor Parrish.
Yes, the reason I pulled that was we use this in Mississauga, and I'm just wanting to know what direction it's going to go in, and will it come back to us before anything changes?
Okay, I'm looking to, I'm not sure, staff on this?
I'm sorry,
Stephen.
if you could just rephrase the question for me. I was in a
That's
conversation
okay.
with my solicitor over here.
He's just a little busybody in your ear. On 10.1-1, it's giving reduced or tax discounts to vacant properties. And there's a letter from Caledon requesting a report on it.
Right, so this came forward, so we are working with the tax groups at the local municipalities to develop a work plan. We'll bring back that work plan in the fall and sort of where we're going with the overall tax policy changes.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, so Councillor Parrish has moved receipt. Do we need a seconder? Moved by Councillor Paleshi. All in favor?
It's actually a referral.
Oh, this one is
It's not recorded, but it's a referral, not receipt.
a
It doesn't need a
referral.
recorded vote, though.
Okay, referral. All in favor? Hands. Carried. Thank you very much. Looking to the clerk, I had noted 10.2, but it's on the consent. I thought the chair had held that.
He did, that's the letter that's referencing the evacuees from Northern Ontario.
You did hold that, or you did not?
Yes, he did, and it would be put together with the reports that were held by Mayor Crombie.
So it'll be brought up at another time?
Yes, thanks.
Excellent. Okay, so 10.2 was held.
And perhaps you, as the chair, can bring forward 15.3 and 15.5 at the same time. They're
Okay.
all related.
Okay, that's
Okay.
great. I will, as long as that's okay from a procedural standpoint, I will bring those forward.
Good.
And we have Mayor Crombie on the board.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So this is with respect to the letter, the first item anyways, and we brought everything forward. So we've been asked to house evacuees and refugees. I received a call from the provincial minister of Solicitor General, I believe, Sylvia Jones, on Sunday asking for our help, and we forwarded the request here to the region. And in the interim, Federal Minister Bill Blair also reached out with respect to Syrian refugees. I guess we've asked staff to come back to us with capacity. I mean, of course, we want to be compassionate, but we have may have constraints around capacity. So maybe I could look to staff and let us know realistically how many can we accommodate and where. And ideally, right now, it's summer, so perhaps even some of the dorms, university colleges. Thank you.
Yeah. Commissioner Sheehy, yes.
Okay, thank you. So through the chair, so I will address each of those requests separately. So we did receive a request from the federal government to assist again with relocating refugee claimants from Toronto. We did at that time do a review of the capacity of hotel rooms and our service abilities and what we felt we could reasonably be successful at handling, and we agreed that we could handle 250 families. This most recent request to assist with the evacuees from Northern Ontario, again, we have gone through the same sort of review, trying to see what capacity and availability exists in hotels, and as staff, what we feel we will be able to reasonably assist with, and we are estimating that we believe we could support approximately 300 evacuees.
Okay.
So
Is that
250 from Toronto and 300 individuals.
Individuals, not families. Wouldn't they be families as well from
So
Northern
there
Ontario?
could be various compositions. So we've taken a look at what hotel rooms are available, the size of the hotel rooms, and we've just basically estimated in total what we think we could handle.
Okay. And could we group these so that in case there are individuals who are refugees, or refugees are mostly the larger families still, or do we know the composition of those individuals?
So I think through the chair, I think there would be an issue in terms of the timing. So the evacuees is an urgent situation, and the most recent information that I have, and I will look to my colleagues in case they have heard something else, is that we could, if approved today, be seeing refugees as soon as Saturday.
Oh, goodness. Evacuees first.
Oh, I'm sorry, evacuees as soon as Saturday.
Correct. And of course, we don't know how long we would have to house them, or do we have any indication on? This depends.
Through the chair, the initial timeframes I've been hearing, I believe 3 weeks to possibly a month or 2 months.
I see. We just don't know, frankly. I did inquire about repayment. And so with the Minister Blair's office on the refugees, the same terms as the City of Toronto received, that we will be repaid by the federal government. When I asked the provincial minister, she indicated to me that the federal government would once again be repaying us. And I said, well, it's interesting that you're making the request and they're paying, so what do you know about repayment?
Through the chair, so we are having active discussions with the federal government, staff representatives from the federal government. We have not come to an agreement yet, but we are cautiously optimistic that we will be receiving some funding for the costs involved with taking the previous refugee claimants from Toronto, and also some costs involved with the increase in refugee claimant use in our shelters going back a couple of years.
Okay, and what about the evacuees?
At this point, again, I will look to my colleagues. We don't have an agreement in place as to the reimbursement of the evacuees, but we do have a verbal commitment.
So perhaps we could get that in writing quickly because they're coming Saturday. I think it's incumbent on us to be compassionate in these cases. It's an issue of dire distress and needs. So would you like a motion here, Mr. Chair, with respect to?
Yeah. So, yep. Thank you.
Madam
Just looking
Chair?
to the clerks, would it be two separate motions for evacuees and refugees, or could it be in one?
There are recommendations in the reports at both 15.3 and 15.5. We would take two separate recorded votes.
Two separate recorded votes.
15.3 deals with the refugee situation, and 15.5 is the evacuees.
So we will put forward 15.3 first as a motion. Mayor Crombie, you would like to move that?
Certainly. There may be other comments. I don't know. But certainly.
I see no one further on the board. So, yes, Chair Unica.
Thank you, and I want to thank Mayor Crombie for her comments, and I think it goes without saying we want to accommodate where we can and where we can help. I just want to be sure that on the part of council, the direction is clear to staff in terms of how this may unfold. Following a meeting that I had on Monday, I too was to have gotten a call at 10 o'clock today from the Minister, Sylvia Jones, but of course I was here. And in discussing it with staff, just some other thoughts that you might have. And it's not like we can meet 2 weeks from now and you can give us direction. We're not back until September unless we have to call an emergency meeting. So some of the balls that we are juggling, recognize the situation with refugees. The latest there is the situation is even more grave than we think. Apparently it could be an area as big as Peel under fire right now. I'm a little disappointed to tell you that when I brought up the question of, great, we're in Peel and we're happy to help. Why Peel? Because you have an airport. And this is with regards to our friends in the north that they can, great. And what about our friends that'll remain nameless in some other neighboring regions, cities that other than Toronto maybe haven't been that forthcoming? So I make you aware of that. The next question that I have is, and Mayor Crombie touched upon this, we don't have the greatest history of getting money back from the other levels of government. So I'll just leave that at that. So now the question becomes if, and it's been touched upon, we don't have at this moment 500 spaces for the 250 that each need. So in terms of managing it as a direction to staff, that, you know, who's first in the door, accommodate them. And if, for example, it's the refugees and we fill up the space, then we tell our friends from Northern Ontario, sorry, we've filled it up with the refugees. Or how will this be? And it's timing beyond our control. But you understand that it may have some sensitivity around it in an area where we're not going to sit around this table where you can give direction or manage it. So I would ask if you could turn your minds to any direction you would like the staff to have, because as of this moment, I don't know who's going to be first in the door necessarily and who's going to pay for it. And so long as you're aware of that and just say, staff, manage it as best you can, I understand. But just a lot of moving parts beyond our control, and I don't want council after the fact to say, why did this unfold this way? Matters that were beyond our control in any event. So I just thought I should mention that. Perhaps back to the chair, you've got other speakers on your list. But if anybody had thoughts, if the staff wants to articulate how can we help all of our friends make sure we get paid in an area where for 7 weeks I may not hear from this council, and you might want to let your thoughts be known on what we should take into consideration. Back to the chair.
Thank you, Chair Unica. So Commissioner Sheehy, I see you're on the board. Can you clarify, was it 250 plus 300 spaces?
Thank you, through the chair. So at this point, I can confirm that we have negotiated 60 rooms, which will give us the capacity to take 250 families, sorry,
250.
In a phased approach to assist the City of Toronto and the federal government. So we do have that capacity. We will be bringing in refugee claimants, but in a phased manner. We won't be taking all 250 families at once. We are also very close to finalizing and securing 150 rooms for evacuees, which will enable us to support approximately 300 individuals. So we have used very conservative estimates, and we are quite confident that we have the capacity to handle these two groups of individuals and families as per what we have estimated in the report.
And thank you. And with regards to the 150 rooms for the 300 evacuees, they would be ready not in a phased approach, but for Saturday?
Through the chair, that is correct. We are finalizing those right now, and they would be available immediately, so probably tomorrow.
Okay, and Mayor Crombie had mentioned that she has spoken directly to Bill Blair. Is there written confirmation from the federal government? No, it's all verbal.
Sorry. So
with regards to compensation?
I believe the same agreement is in place as is in place with Toronto. We actually referred them here. So I don't know if you have anything written.
Could the commissioner speak further to that?
So again, and I apologize, it's confusing because we have two reports today that are somewhat related. So in terms of the refugee claimants, the negotiations with the federal government are ongoing, and Minister Blair's office is involved in that. We don't have an agreement at this time. With the evacuees, we don't have an agreement, but there is a process in place for invoicing the federal government back for the costs. So there is an established process in place.
Okay, thank you for those clarifications. We now have Councillor Parrish on the board.
Well, two good things could happen. We have been talking for the last year and a half about a shortage of shelter beds in Mississauga, and maybe this is an impetus to us to start planning to be able to take groups like this, but also in future, in the winter and other disasters, taking our own people into proper shelters. So I'm glad we're doing this. Secondly, you can invoice the federal government all you want. If they choose not to pay, they're not going to pay. So what are we going to do, throw the kids out on the street? So the payment to me is important, but it's not essential. So if we don't get the money, we don't get the money. This is a gesture on our part, a small gesture, I might add, to help our fellow man, and I wholeheartedly support it. And if we don't get the bill or the money back, we just write that off.
Thank you, Councillor Parrish. Councillor Dillon.
Thank you. Quick question. Have we reached out to any community partners to help with the evacuees? I know particularly, I think the Ontario Gordoras Committee, when the wildfire happened in Fort McMurray, they sent a $400,000 check. So if there's any way we can partner with different community groups, different religious groups to either help us out in any way. I know the Gordoras will open their doors. I can guarantee it in any which way possible. So if we can have that discussion with some of these partners, I think that it might help us alleviate some of the costs even.
Commissioner Sheehy.
Through the chair, yes, we are making those connections and having those discussions right now.
So, sorry, can you advise particularly with who?
I can get, through the chair, I can get that information to let you know who we've made initial contact with. I can follow up for you.
Thank you.
Okay, seeing no one further on the board. So this is to the motion for 15.3, which is Region Appeal Support for Refugee Claimants. We have Mayor Crombie has moved the motion. I don't know, do we need it on the, do we need anything? Seconded by Councillor Parrish. And this is a recorded vote, obviously. Okay. Okay, thank you very much, and that passes. Thank you. And then on to 15.5, which is another motion requesting to host evacuees from fire-threatened Northern Ontario communities. I believe, Mayor Crombie, you have moved this motion as well. Seconded by Councillor Paleshi. A recorded vote. And that passes as well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and well done to all. Moving on then to Public Works. Chair Groves, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There was one item held, and it was 11.5. Councillor Raz, you held that?
Yes, Madam Chair, thank you very much. I just wanted to, just to reflect along the last year, I'm in one of those areas that originally had Mterra as a service provider, and then was the, we were moved out, or they were moved out, and Waste Connections moved in. I've noticed a huge improvement in service, a lot fewer broken carts, and my complaints went way down. So there's, I don't know why there's such a discrepancy between the two companies, and I don't know that it can be addressed, but I am pleased to see that staff are continuing to be on top of Mterra to make sure that we're driving their response times into the more positive for our residents. So I just wanted to provide my feedback. Thanks. I'll move the report if nobody's else. Oh, wait, Councillor Parrish is on this.
Great.
Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Raz. Councillor Parrish?
Yeah, I just want to also shine a bit of a light on the fact that Mterra has improved greatly. I'm glad everything's better in your area, but we also have to give credit where credit's due. I think they had too big an area, and they were a young company, and I think they were struggling, and with the help of our staff, they're doing a good job now. So I think that has to be recognized as well.
Okay, thank you. So it's here for information. It's curbside waste collection contractor's performance, moved by Councillor Raz, second by Councillor Parrish, and a recorded vote? No recorded vote, show of hands, because it's information. It's carried. We had one item of communication held, and that's 12.2. It was held by Councillor Sinclair.
Thank you. In a previous presentation to council by Credit Valley Conservation, there was a possible interpretation that all was well up in Bell Fountain with the Bell Fountain Conservation Area. And I thought it would be useful for Regional Council to be aware of a set of minutes from a meeting back on May 23rd between 3 Credit Valley Conservation officials, 2 members of the Public Neighborhood Watch, and 2 members of the directors of the Bell Fountain Community Organization. And in the minutes, they talk about the need for parking for visitors to the park needs to be fixed. Until it is, we are asking the CVC to close the park. And then they went on, the community overflowing with cars parked everywhere every sunny day. And further than that, they suggested that this is a business that is not well run. It causes trespasses through other people's properties to access the park at all hours. In fact, people are using Uber to deliver themselves to the proximity of the park and then wandering down over hills through people's properties and then call Uber again when they want to be picked up. And so there's a huge impact on the community. And again, they asked the park should be closed until there is a solution for parking. They didn't stop there, however. Discussion went on, and they talked about alternatives to reduce the impact on the community, such as a shuttle visitors from exterior parking lots, and suggested a couple of locations. There is a bit of a shuttle service that was tested out last year from having people park at Terracotta and then run them up to the Badlands site, reducing some impacts on that area. So some thought should be considered of taking that shuttle and picking them up, dropping them off at Badlands, taking them around to Bell Fountain, and then back down to Terracotta might be value added. So just to alert council that there's some real friction in Bell Fountain, and there's just no space to bring more parking. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Raz?
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. And I know that these are minutes of the meeting with the CVC, but Councillor Sinclair, I would suggest that perhaps we give direction here to make sure that this gets forwarded to the CVC Board of Directors so they can have a review and a discussion about it as well. I think that's helpful because if it just stays at the staff level, that awareness may not be made at the board level. Bless you. And, you know, it's a difficult situation. And I've mentioned it before. I have Jack Darling Park, which is a city park, and Rattray Marsh, which is a CVC park down in Ward 2. And no matter what, there'll never be enough parking. You know, the CVC is trying to do the best it can, but you can't pave paradise and put up a parking lot. And they are desperately trying to work with all the municipalities in areas where they have conservation authorities to try to manage the parking area. And the best thing to do will be to have things like shuttle services and improved public transportation to those parks. So we are, in fact, working on it. I'm sure it's not fast enough for you, but I don't think a solution is to close the parks because people will still find their way. And it's something that we all have to manage. So it's a work in progress, but I would suggest we send this to the CVC Board of Directors. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So it's moved by Councillor Sinclair, Councillor Raz, seconded by Councillor Raz. There is direction to send it to CVC, so it's just show of hands. All those in favor, that's carried. And there is also a referral. Show of hands for the referral. Carried. Thank you. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. And given that we've dealt with 15.3 and 5, I believe that takes us to, 13.1, the Region Appeals role in local Ontario health teams. So that's over to Councillor Downey.
Thank you, through you, Chair. The item 13.1, the Region Appeals role in local Ontario health teams. I'm not sure if there's, who's held by Councillor Raz. Go ahead.
13.1.
It was held by me. And, I did not write my question down, so I'm sure it'll come back to me and I will ask staff directly. I'll be happy to move the report.
Okay, thank you, and that's all for health. So we'll move receipt. A recorded vote for the report, moved by Councillor Raz, seconded by Councillor Fonseca, even though she can't remember her question.
Okay, and does that conclude health, Madam Clerk? So back to the chair. I think that takes us to item 19, other business. Item 19.1, $25,000 provision for municipal pride color crosswalks. I believe that was introduced this morning on behalf of Mayors Brown and Councillor Santos. Do I have any speakers to item 19.1?
It was the added item. Okay, thank you, Chair. This is the added item, and thank you for Councillor Santos for placing it. I was here late. We've been celebrating Peel Pride throughout the month of July. We had our event.
Mayor Brown, I'm sorry, just to be clear, if you have a motion before us or what is the case, we need to waive the rules accordingly. Okay. So if you can just be clear on what's before the chair and the committee, and then the clerk tells me that I make sure I follow the rules. Okay. So the matter you wish to put before us is?
A request from Peel Pride.
Madam Clerk?
And it's got a motion?
A motion, yes.
Then we need a waiving of the rules.
Okay. We need 2/3 then to deal with the matter. Show of hands, Madam Clerk, is that? Show of hands to deal with the matter. 2/3. Oh, sorry, keep them up. I thought we'd achieved 2/3, but. Very good. And if we could formally have the motion put up on the screen so everybody knows what we're speaking to.
Do they have it? Staff have it?
Yeah. So if staff could put it up as well. Mayor Brown, you still have the floor. Please proceed.
Thank you. We had a request from Peel Pride as we're celebrating Pride Month in Peel in July. They've been working on a project. I understand they've been speaking to regional staff about this, where they want each municipality to choose a crosswalk in their municipality. I think a lot of the councils have already met with Peel Pride, so they should be familiar with this request, but I think most of us feel strongly that celebrating equity and inclusion, celebrating the LGBTQ community is something that is very appropriate in July, given the struggles and adversity this community has faced, and I know I would welcome this in Brampton. Because it's a regional organization, they thought this would be appropriate going to the Region Appeal.
Very good, and you now see the motion before you. Councillor Santos.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Chair. Clearly, I support this initiative. Our Pride community, the 2S LGBTQ plus community, in July, we all know, is celebrating Pride. It was celebrated in June in Toronto, and I think showing solidarity with our community is super important, and this is just another creative way to do that. So I certainly support the motion.
Thank you. Councillor Groves.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I too support the motion. Mayor Brown, thank you for bringing it forward. I did have some inquiries from my community as well, and we were trying to get one, but we just didn't have enough time because the region did not have a policy on how to do this. So thank you for bringing that, and certainly look forward to staff coming back with this.
Very good. You have the motion before you. I will take it as read. It has been moved by Mayor Brown, seconded by Councillor Santos. I need a recorded vote. Please vote accordingly. And that carries. Thank you. That brings me down to notices of motion. Madam Clerk, we've dealt with 21, 2, and 3, correct? So I'm on to the bylaws. The first bylaw would be, and I take the motion from Councillor Kovac, seconded by Councillor Innes, that the bylaws listed on the July 11th, 2019 Regional Council agenda, being bylaws 45, 2019 and 46, 2019, be given the required numbers of reading, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. You've heard the motion. All those in favor? That is carried. The next motion that I have, Madam Clerk, is 22-2? Oh, so just to manage ourselves accordingly, 22 is an in-camera matter that I think is rather straightforward. Other than the personnel matter, does anybody need to go in camera for any other matter? I believe the answer is no. So, Madam Clerk, why don't I deal with 22-2 now, which is the bylaw. Is that the appropriate way to proceed? 22-2, 22-3, and 22-4, all of which speak to expropriation proceedings and land acquisitions specifically, and further that the recommendations contained within the confidential reports relating to items 22-2, 22-4, inclusive, listed on the July 11th Regional Council agenda, being matters that relate to expropriations, by the way, be approved and become public on adoption. That has been moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Medeiros. All those in favor? That is carried. Madam Clerk? Oh, sorry, recorded vote. My apologies. A recorded vote on that, and you're way ahead of me. Thank you, Madam Mayor Crombie. And that is carried. That brings me down to my last matter, the in-camera. Is it the wish of council to carry on, or do you wish to break for lunch? Carry on? Very good. So at this time then, anybody that doesn't need to be here, if you would make your way, and we will deal with the in-camera. Opening the doors, Madam Clerk, we will be back in session momentarily. Okay, we are back in session. The motion that I have before me, moved by Councillor Mahoney, seconded by Councillor Kovac, is that, pardon me?
No, I thought it was Councillor Parrish.
Oh, I'm sorry, Elise, I thought it was less formal. Moved by Councillor Parrish, seconded by Mayor Brown, that the direction given in camera relating to items 22.5 listed on the July 11, 2019 council agenda be approved. All those in favor? Oh, it's a recorded vote, sorry. So once again, that is a recorded vote on the direction given in camera relating to item 22.5 listed on the agenda be approved. A recorded vote, please. Madam Clerk, are you ready to certify the vote? Yes. And that carries. Thank you. Madam Clerk, you said I had to read it a second time for the second. There was a second clause, as you recall, moved by Councillor Parrish, seconded by Mayor Brown. I will read it again. That the direction given in camera on the second clause related to item 22.5 listed on the July 11, 2019 council agenda be approved. Recorded vote once again, please. Madam Clerk, that carries. Oh, couple more. That carries. Next, Madam Clerk. I have a motion moved by Councillor Carlson, seconded by Councillor Dasco, that the bylaw relating to in-camera item 22.2 being bylaw 47, 2018 be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the regional chair and the regional clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All those in favor? That is carried. And my next motion, moved by Councillor Starr, seconded by Councillor Paleshi, that the bylaw 48-2019 to confirm the proceedings of Regional Council at its meeting held July 11, 2019, and to authorize the execution of documents in accordance with the Region of Peel bylaws relating thereto, be given the required number of readings, taken as read, signed by the Regional Chair and the Regional Clerk, and the corporate seal be affixed thereto. All those in favor? That is carried. I now have a motion to adjourn from Councillors Innes and Fortini. All in favor? That is carried with thanks to all. Have a good afternoon.